The black-haired, smiling man unbuttoned the buttons of his shirt, revealing the contours of his figure. The girl, as if accustomed to such moments, met his gaze with confidence. Without showing any embarrassment, she slowly unbuttoned the remaining buttons on his shirt. The man standing close to the girl in the dress looked into her eyes with a hint of excitement. With delicacy in his voice, he asked if she was ready. The guy's white hair shone under the moonlight, creating the effect as if it were made of polished porcelain. The rays of the moon highlighted each hair, making it sparkling and incredibly refined, as if it were a work of art. In the shadows of the night, this snow-white hair acquired a mysterious glow, as if magic was locked in every strand. The athletic man stood in front of the girl with confidence, waiting for her answer. His muscular figure expressed strength and determination, and his gaze was filled with anticipation. Hints of athletic training flickered in the shadow of his contours, giving the impression of being ready for any challenge. With uncertainty in her voice, the girl said that she was ready. Her words sounded like a quiet whisper breaking through the excitement. The girl swallowed nervously, beads of sweat slowly running down her face. There was worry in her eyes because this happens to her every night. Through excitement, the girl, gathering her strength, decided to take this action. Her hand, trembling from tension, slowly approached the guy's body. The girl suddenly withdrew her hand, apparently unable to cope with her excitement. Her movement was abrupt, as if her internal dialogue with herself had reached a critical point. The girl screamed in irritation that she still couldn't get used to it. The guy, looking around at the excited Terella, asked her why she was still shy. The man took Terella by the hand and gently told her that she did not need to stress, but only think about good things and think positively. His touch was like a sign of support, as if he was trying to lift the burden of worries from her. The girl still couldn't accept the fact that she would have to go through this every night. An echo of anxiety flickered in her eyes, as if each new sunset reminded her of the inevitability of these internal struggles and trials. Terella remembered how once in her childhood she stood by someone's bed with tears in her eyes. Words that had passed through the years sounded in her soul. Someone, whose name was like an echo of the past, begged her not to die. A woman who looked like Terella was lying in the bed, holding her small hand. In the midst of moments filled with excitement and uncertainty, she whispered that if Terella survived, then the whole world would be hers. It was the girl's mother, lying in bed, her fingers tightly holding her daughter's hand. With eyes full of love and determination, she insisted that she would try to do everything possible to ensure that her daughter lived a better life. Terella's mother, holding her hand, conveyed her last words through a look filled with love and warmth. At that moment, the room felt the quiet weight of farewell. An aristocratic man, sitting at his desk, addressed the girl with an elegant speech calling her heir to the imperial throne of the Leonhart Empire. Emperor Lupion, Terella's father, expressed his bewilderment when she refused to do something, noting that she did not seem to fully understand the current situation on the continent. Terella realized that she would have to make her way to the continent, which would take more than 2 months due to the turmoil in which these lands were immersed. Terella's father asked her about the heir. His voice conveyed not only concern for the future of the family, but also the emphasized importance of its role in the preservation and continuation of the imperial line. The girl replied that she was not interested in all this, and asked why she should be a contender for the throne if she has an older sister. The emperor covered himself with his hand irritably, and told Terella not to say that she didn't understand anything. There was a note of disappointment in his tone, and a desire for her to take the situation with the seriousness it deserved. The girl said that she was simply defending herself, to which the emperor shouted in displeasure that she had broken her elder sister's arm. At this point, her explanation faced the obvious disagreement of her father, whose words were filled with discontent and concern for the well-being of the family. Terella said her sister pushed her down the stairs, and the girl reflexively grabbed her older sister's hand, causing them to fall together. Her story contained elements of defense and attempts to explain her actions, emphasizing the unforeseen consequences. Terella said she was in pain then too. Her voice contained not only physical pain, but also an emotional component, emphasizing that the event left marks not only on her body, but also on her heart. The girl, with a slight note of irony in her voice, said that she understood that her sister suffered more. This phrase contained a tinge of self-irony, and the realization that her own pain may seem secondary in comparison to what her sister experienced. The emperor began to blame the future heiress for breaking her brother's leg. She replied that she defended herself with a chair when her brother tried to kick her. The little sister stood crying behind her father, while he scolded Terella for the scar on her sister's face. At this moment, the younger sister's tears could be both a symbol of physical pain and a reflection of her emotional state. The pink-haired girl said that we need to find the one who gave the little sister the horsewhip, and not blame her for everything. Her words carried an echo of reason and a desire for justice, emphasizing the need to examine the root of the problem, rather than mindless accusations. Terella said that the youngest daughter was waving a whip, trying to hit the girl with it, but unsuccessfully hit herself in the face. The girl could not understand who could give such a thing to the child. She, in turn, only choked on tears. This moment conveyed not only bewilderment regarding the origin of the whip, but also the deep emotional pain experienced by the younger woman to whom it belonged. The eldest calmed the younger one and said that they would find a doctor who would remove this scar from the child's face. Her words carried a promise of healing and hope for the future. The pink-haired girl thought that perhaps she could heal her sister with her powers, but she had never healed anyone and had no intention of doing so with a capricious little one. The emperor began to demand that Terella stop causing conflicts in the family, and asked why all her sisters and brother became disabled, but there was not a scratch on her. The girl had an unknown power that no one knew about, neither the king nor family members. Her secret power enveloped her, creating a mysterious and impressive aural presence around her, inaccessible even to those close to her. Terella said that there was an explanation for all this, and that if she had lied, she would have been dead a long time ago. The girl said that her whole family wanted to kill her, throwing the emperor into a stupor. This shocking statement conveyed an atmosphere of suspicion and mistrust, revealing the complex and tangled relationships within the family that had now become the center of attention. This statement enraged Lupion, and he threw his inkwell at Terella. The father shouted that it was Terella who would go as a contender for the throne. His voice showed determination and desire to restore order in the house through his daughter's participation in important family matters. The ink spread across the girl's long dress, ending up on the luxurious carpet, just as Terella left a mark on the royal couple. The girl said that if the family forces her, then a certain Korean will be extremely dissatisfied. Her words carried a mysterious and threatening tone, adding mystery and uncertainty to the already complex relationships in the family. The only one who cared about Terella was her older brother Karayan, the only legitimate successor and son of the queen, heir to the throne. The girl asked her father if he had forgotten how much Karajan loved her. This question was not only demanding, but also an attempt to remind the father of brotherly affection and support, which he might have lost sight of in the family whirlwinds. Terella remembered, nervously rubbing her fingers, that her brother was now far from her, researching a new epidemic. In this moment, her worry and fear for her brother interacted to create an image of how family bonds can be tested even by distance and external threats. The girl realized that the king had planned everything in advance, because if Karayan had been here, he would have already come to the defense of his sister. This realization reflected not only the suspicion of the king's sinister plan, but also the feeling of losing the selfless support that she had previously found in her older brother. Terella asked Lupion if he knew that the emperor of the empire, Leonhart, executed half of his ministers as soon as he received the title. Her question conveyed not only concern for political intrigue, but also an emphasized caution towards the actions of the new emperor, creating tension in their conversation. The girl said that she had heard rumors that the emperor locked himself in his bedroom every night, and drank so much that he confused day and night. Terella said that when the ministers were trying to decide on a candidate for the place of Empress, the man gathered all the noble daughters of the empire, and he did not like any of them, so the emperor sent everyone back. The girl admitted that she was surprised when the concubine's son killed all his brothers and took the throne during the struggle for the throne. Her confession conveyed a tone of surprise and shock at the unexpected outcome of family intrigue, creating an unstable image of family relationships in their home. Terella called the emperor a tyrant, a womanizer, and a drunkard, saying that he was rightly called the worst ruler on the continent. The girl's father frowned and said that she should go anyway. Lupion said that Terella's only benefit is her cute face, which was passed on to her from her mother, and, according to her father, the girl should use it. Terella looked into the king's eyes and said that she understood that they wanted to send her to certain death. Her words contained not only a share of sadness, but also the courage to face fate, which created a tense and solemn atmosphere in their conversation. The elder sister said that if the girl had died earlier, they would not have come to this. The sister smiled maliciously and mockingly said that she had no idea why Terella was still alive, and remembered how the girl once almost died, greedily gasping for air. Terella looked blankly at her sisters and listened to their stupid statements. The girl was seriously ill when she was 6 years old. This period of her life was marked not only by physical suffering, but also perhaps by the formation of the fortitude to overcome the disease at such a young age. Then Terella's still living mother calmed her little daughter and said that it was okay if she didn't remember anything, because she had a high fever at the time. The worried mother told her daughter that she had miraculously survived. People around said that in order to save Terella's life, her mother crossed the sea, visited other countries, and studied the depths of the mountains. This story created an image of a strong and devoted mother, willing to do anything for the well-being of her child, adding elements of adventure and sacrifice to their life story. The girl's father told her that she should not contradict what had already been decided. Terella, in turn, wanted to keep the promise she made to her mother. At this moment of conflict, not only the power of the father was heard, but also the internal struggle of the daughter between family duty and her own will. Lupion ordered his daughter to set off thinking that she was doing her duty, to which she only screamed in bewilderment. 2 servants suddenly grabbed Terella by the arms, and she just stood there in a stupor, not understanding what was happening. At this moment, her stupor and surprise were emphasized by her frozen movements, creating the image of a girl who had lost control of the situation. The girl did not want to accept that she would now be taken to Leonhart. Lupion said Terella is leaving right now. His words were stern and unyielding, emphasizing the urgency of this decision and the power of the father in this situation. The girl immediately began to scream and struggle, simultaneously trying to express everything that had accumulated in her. Her emotional outburst expressed not only protest, but also accumulated stress and dissatisfaction, creating a moment of release of repressed feelings. The entire palace heard swearing from the king's office when Terella tried to escape the hands of the servants. Her obscene expressions echoed through the corridors, creating an unexpected and shocking sound within the palace walls, which emphasized her strong emotional impact. The girl sat in the carriage and smiled. Terella got out of the carriage and thought that she should have realized this when the king said that the journey would take no more than 2 months. In her reflections, there was not only an awareness of the expected share, but also, perhaps, a feeling of loss of freedom and disbelief in the promises provided. The girl was tired of the fact that she had to go not 2, but 3 months to Leonhart. Terella stood near the carriage and thought about something. Various emotions and thoughts may have flashed in her thoughtful gaze, creating a mysterious and deep image of a girl immersed in the inner world of reflection. Many princesses came to Leonhart to receive the title of Empress, but they were all rejected. The original plan was that Terella would arrive, leave her luggage, rest after the journey, and only then meet the emperor. And if so, then she need not worry that they will meet now. In this regard, there is a noticeable emphasis on a step-by-step approach and giving the girl time to recover before an important event. The girl happily thought that the inadequate emperor would not like her and would run away from here. There was a hint of mocking optimism and a desire to avoid undesirable circumstances in her thoughts, creating a slight touch of sarcasm in her thoughts. The reason why Terella did not run away a long time ago lies in her patience with her relatives, who constantly pestered her. The girl already had a plan for revenge, and this strategy of patience served as a kind of basis for her long-term plans for retribution. Despite all the insults and actions directed at her, Terella was shocked that she was sold to some unknown man. The girl was sure that if the emperor rejected her, Terella's father would find her a new stranger, and then she would definitely not run away. The girl was infuriated by everything, and she was ready to live her whole life on the run. Her condition reflected accumulated disappointment and fatigue from family circumstances, prompting her to consider flight as an opportunity to free herself from her shackles. Terella thought that since she lived in such a large empire, she was unlikely to be found. In her thoughts, the hope of anonymity in the vast expanses of the empire emerged, creating the illusion of temporary refuge from heavy responsibilities. A pink-haired girl with the motto, "Forward to Rejection," calmly approached the entrance to the castle. There was determination in her steps and a readiness in her eyes to face any challenge, including possible rejection, creating a stark contrast between her inner strength and the outer world. Terella turned around sharply, seeing something behind her. Her movement showed tension and attention, creating a mysterious moment of anticipation and a possible sudden event. Behind the girl walked 3 guys in dresses, and it seemed that she recognized the one walking in the middle. Her facial expression could show recognition or surprise, creating an intriguing dynamic between the main character and the unforeseen circumstance. Terella realized that this tall, dark-haired guy was the very worst emperor, Leonhart von Leonhart. During their confrontation, the atmosphere was tense, and the girl realized that this was the guy she needed to dislike. The emperor asked Terella if she was the princess from the kingdom of Lupeon. The girl bowed to the black-haired man and greeted him, introducing herself as Terella Lupeon. Her worship may have been a combination of respect and an intention to maintain her individuality in this difficult context. The excited girl did not understand how Leonhart ended up here. Terella hoped that he would send her away immediately, while he ordered her to stand up straight. There might have been a hint of defiance in her gaze, but she was forced to follow the instructions, anticipating what would come next in this unexpected turn of events. The emperor and princess looked at each other, and neither of them dared to break the silence. Various emotions could appear in the dark gaze, creating an atmosphere of tension and uncertainty, as if both were awaiting the next move in this unexpected meeting. Leonhart's eyes opened wide, and his eyebrows trembled a little, as if he was taken aback by something. Surprise and some surprise could be traced in his expression, creating a mysterious moment that required clarification and reaction. Terella stood irritably, waiting, not understanding why the guy was looking at her for so long. In her posture, one could notice bewilderment and impatience, and her gaze expressed some disinterest, as if she was waiting for clarification, but none came. Leonhart's lips trembled, as if he wanted to say something, but could not. At this moment, one could notice some tension and hesitation, as if he had words but was hesitant to say them. The emperor leaned over the girl, took her by the shoulder, and said that he had finally found what he needed. In response, the girl only gasped in surprise. Her facial expression could reflect a mixture of surprise and anxiety at the unknown. Terella turned pale, not accepting her defeat. Her face reflected dissatisfaction and possible dissatisfaction, as if she had not expected such a turn of events and was not going to come to terms with the new reality. Leonhart proposed to the already confused girl. There may have been eloquence and some uncertainty in his gesture, and in her expression there could be read surprise at a proposal that she did not expect. Terella tucked her hair behind her ear and asked the emperor to repeat himself, pretending that she had not heard. There could be a hint of slight irony or subtle playfulness in her gesture, as if she was playing the scene with sophistication. The black-haired guy once again proposed marriage, but the princess responded only with silence. At this moment, inner hesitation and reflection could be read in her eyes, creating an atmosphere of mystery and mystery. The girl said that she had become deaf in both ears from the long journey, and that she needed to visit a doctor, hoping that this would scare the emperor. Her words may have been delivered with a hint of humor, attempting to create a light atmosphere despite the serious context of the event. Terella asked Leonhart if he was sending her home, to which he replied that she just wanted to hear the proposal from him for the 3rd time. There was a hint of mockery to their conversation, creating a puzzling dynamic. The girl asked in surprise that the emperor really wanted to marry her, to which he only laughed, saying that he quickly cured Terella's ears. There was a slight touch of humor in their dialogue, which created an atmosphere of unpredictability. The princess was shocked by such a statement, not understanding why she should be Leonhart's wife. Her eyes reflected bewilderment and a small amount of rejection of this unexpected fate. Terella thought that this was just a dream that she was having because of the long journey in the carriage. Feelings of unreality and surprise at the unexpected turn of events warred in her mind. The girl thought that the emperor was crazy, while Leonhart had already warned Jeram with the determination of the wedding date. The sudden certainty of this strange scenario made Terella feel like she was in someone else's dream. The Emperor's advisor asked whether it was worth organizing such an event on the next free day. This course of events only strengthened the girl's feeling that everything around her was becoming surreal and incomprehensible. Terella still could not understand why she had become the object of the Emperor's interest, and the question of her future remained a mystery to her. Leonhart, frowning in confusion, turned to Jeram, wondering what kind of absurdity he had just uttered. The Emperor ordered a priest to be consulted to determine the date of the wedding, insisting on a balance between what was appropriate and what was close to the moment. Jeram suggested that a compromise should be found between the two extremes, considering how quickly or slowly to prepare for the ceremony. The men found a compromise in determining the wedding date, carefully weighing opinions and suggestions. Meanwhile, Terella was waiting for an answer regarding the doctor, seeing in this perhaps the last hope for changing the situation. Terella realized that her upcoming marriage would lead her to a life with a violent, lustful alcoholic. This reality raped her hopes and maintained a sense of helplessness, creating a dark foreboding of the future. Terella, realizing that her goal was to avoid marriage, tried to create chaos in the heated conversations about the wedding. She abruptly interrupted the discussion, reminding everyone that her intentions were not limited to marriage, and tried to change the course of events. Leonhart intervened decisively, addressing Terella. With his gaze, he expressed dissatisfaction with her outburst and emphasized that the decisions made have their consequences. Under his stern gaze, the community was once again shrouded in tension, awaiting the Emperor's further words. Leonhart looked at Terella with some curiosity, asking if she had come with the intention of taking the place of the Empress. The girl answered in the affirmative, meeting his gaze with determination, but she still had to face the new challenges this palace had in store for her. The girl, immersed in the whirlwind of palace events and unexpected circumstances, almost forgot that she was sent to Leonhart as a contender for the throne. New turns of events obscured the original purpose of her arrival, leaving her confused and bewildered. The advisor and the Emperor decided that Princess Terella would reside in a separate building on the south side, owned by the royal family. This decision is intended to provide her with the privacy she needs, while emphasizing her important position in the Leonhart family. Leonhart emphasized that he would not allow his future wife to live in any kind of reconstruction, thereby emphasizing his attention to Terella's comfort and status in the new place. The king ordered Jeram to take the luggage, and he, raising his eyebrows, asked if the luggage should be taken to the main palace. The girl remained in shock from the unexpected turns of events that she had not foreseen that day. Terella turned around, her gaze slid over the castle, and she slowly realized that her destination was probably to move to the palace to the Emperor. This sudden turn of events made her heart beat even faster. Leonhart ordered the princess's belongings to be taken to the room for special guests, expressing surprise when he noticed that the girl took only one suitcase with her. The man's pointed interest brought mystery into the air, as if noticing something unusual in her simple choice. Emperor Leonhart, looking at her small suitcase, decided that the princess had deliberately chosen so few things in order to meet him faster. His imagination painted a picture. She does not tolerate long waits and eagerly dreams of meeting. This belief only made him more determined to do everything he could to make her stay special. Terella smiled mockingly, looking at the man. She found it funny that he could even think that her minimal baggage was tied up in her anticipation of meeting him. There was irony in her eyes, something like a secret unraveled secret that she was interested in revealing. Stars of regret twinkled in Terella's eyes as she examined her lonely suitcase in this luxurious room. At that moment, it seemed to her that every extra thing could become another brick in the wall protecting the girl from an unknown future. The gaze of Leonhart, the sovereign of an unshakable empire, slid over the shabby carriage, and the ghost of discontent flashed in his eyes. The majestic emperor, accustomed to luxury and impeccable service, was not ready for such an undignified entry of the supposed future empress. The broad cover of the carriage, once bright red, now hung in tatters, as if the last chance for a normal meeting had disappeared, leaving only fragments of the appearance. He was stunned, expecting respect for his status, but instead received a lost struggle with a long journey. Leonhart, looking piercingly at the shabby carriage, found in this appearance something more than just the limited capabilities of the state. His gaze was agitated, as if he was trying to decipher the secrets of what had happened. He then turned to his advisor as if expecting an explanation from him. Terella, faced with questions about the tattered luggage, just silently shook her head without uttering a word. Her eyes expressed mixed emotions, somewhere between fatigue and determination. She refused to engage in a useless argument, preferring to keep her thoughts and feelings inside, not giving the emperor and his courtiers access to her private sphere. Something mysterious and challenging sounded in this silence, leaving room for guesswork and misunderstanding. Terella's inner voice scolded those who gave her this wretched luggage. Obscene expressions in her irritated thoughts fell like meteorites, burning everything in their path. This internal storm of indignation surprised even Leonhart, who could not restrain his expression of dissatisfaction, realizing that she was clearly not delighted with the things she had received. Terella, raising her head, noticed the emperor's gaze, full of questions and seemingly hidden warnings. He tried to decipher her reaction to her own luggage, and a shadow of disapproval flashed in his eyes, as if he was condemning not only her clothes, but also her defenselessness in front of the palace. This look hinted at the complex relationship that was just beginning to develop between the emperor and the princess. Terella at that moment felt an invisible weight of responsibility fall on her shoulders. She realized that admitting her unwillingness to marry could lead to irreparable consequences, even danger to her own life. Threats and dark intrigues loomed somewhere in the shadows of the palace, and she decided that she needed to remain vigilant and attentive, hiding her true feelings. Terella, stuttering a little, raised her hand and softly asked if she could go to her room. Her voice sounded uncertain, but one could hear in it the hope for at least some privacy. The glances of the advisor and the ruler glanced at her figure in bewilderment, but Leonhart nodded to her in agreement, giving the girl the opportunity to escape the onslaught of attention and internal doubts. Terella knew that her hopes of escape would only be hopes for now. She realized that her request for temporary solitude had been accepted, but in this admission of her own weakness, there was an echo of the fact that the attempt to escape was postponed indefinitely. The looks of those around her, like invisible chains, connected the princess to this palace labyrinth, leaving little chance for freedom. After some time, Terella began to enjoy a rich life, immersing herself in a luxurious bath. Servants fussed around her, carefully pouring her aromatic wines. The luxury of the palace and the abundance of servants seemed attractive, forgetting about the harsh reality that she had to live in this palace, being subordinate to her future husband, Emperor Leonhart. The food in the palace was exceptionally delicious, as if every dish had been carefully prepared to tempt Terella. The aromas of spices, fresh herbs, and exquisite seasonings filled the air, and the dishes were beautifully combined in color and taste. The girl was given a luxurious massage using fragrant oils. Delicate and pleasant smells filled the room, creating an atmosphere of calm. The oils, applied with gentle movements, relaxed her body, and the massage therapist's hands accurately found the tense points, freeing her from the shackles of fatigue. This process brought her not only physical relief, but also created a feeling of balance and harmony. Terella shuddered as she rose from the bed, her eyes filled with sudden determination. It was as if a wave of energy swept through her, causing the girl to react sharply and prepare for something important. Perhaps a plan was brewing in her mind, or an important goal was emerging that crowded out all other thoughts. Terella, although she was aware that she was given a magnificent life in the palace, gradually realized that it was easy to get used to it, but she did not like this luxurious lifestyle. Among all the luxury and pleasures, she felt as if in a golden cage, deprived of freedom and choice. In her soul, internal stormy thoughts multiplied that this was not the path that she had chosen. Terella was amazed to realize that this is what the life of an empress looks like. All this luxurious lifestyle, court intrigues and serene procedures, seemed far from reality to her. Under this luxurious life, the princess felt a certain heavy burden that made her doubt her place in this splendor. Terella swung her foot off the soft bed, carefully putting on her slippers, which seemed unusually comfortable to her after long days of travel and luxurious treatments in the palace. Step by step, she examined her new abode, trying to get used to every rustle and shade of luxury that surrounded her everywhere. Terella sighed and whispered, looking around at the luxury of the palace, "It will be a pity to leave all this. But if I stay, I will have to live with a tyrant." There was a kind of sadness mixed with determination in her words, and at that moment she realized that even in this world of exquisite luxury, her heart and soul remained unconquered. Terella's mother told her to find a worthy man, telling the girl that she deserves happiness and love, and that the princess should not allow anyone to determine her fate. Her words sounded like a message of hope in the princess's heart, and Terella felt the strength to move forward. Even in this palace labyrinth of political intrigue, Terella suddenly felt a voice interrupting her thoughts from out of nowhere. The man, radiating mystery, came close, wondering what the princess was thinking about. Her heart beat faster, feeling the onset of something new in this castle, full of secrets and mysteries. Terella turned around and met the gaze of Leonhart, who, in new clothes, smiled at her, directing his gaze directly into her eyes. The moment their eyes met, an invisible connection hung in the air, and even the splendor of the emperor could not resist the magic of the moment. Leonhart, with a smile playing on his lips, asked the future empress if the future empress wanted to escape, piercing her with a gaze full of intrigue. The girl did not understand whether this was a joke or not, and just silently looked at the emperor. Terella suddenly found herself in a situation where Leonhart's words about his obsession to escape touched her to the core. Shocked by the unexpected question, she just silently absorbed the air, feeling her heart beating faster, and her world seemed unstable, as if the calm that had hitherto sheltered her was destroyed under the pressure of an unexpected dialogue. The ruler, looking the princess in the eyes, warned Terella that her decision to run away would not lead to anything good. His words conveyed not only a subtle warning, but also a hint of the hidden complications that might await those attempting to change the established order of the empire. Such a warning convinced her that the path to freedom might be much more difficult than she thought, and hidden dangers might await at every turn. Leonhart only silently gazed intently into Terella's eyes, as if he was looking for answers to his own questions in them. There was a tense atmosphere in the silence, one that felt the uncertainty of the future and the unresolved secrets hidden in the depths of their meeting. This moment became a brief period of silent understanding when their gazes intersected, revealing to both complex prospects and possible twists of fate. Terella, in turn, looked warily at the emperor, feeling that some secret was hidden in his words and gaze, of which she had no idea. It seemed to her that every word he said could turn her world upside down, and she cautiously waited for explanations, trying to read in his facial expression the key to what was happening. Terella was already thinking that the man wanted to return her to her homeland, but he stopped her flow of thoughts, continuing his speech. Leonhart, seeing the confusion on Terella's face, took a moment to point out that the worn-out items she left at home indicated that her father might not be so worried about her returning. The pause in his speech was filled with incredible tension, as if there was a secret in the air that the girl was just beginning to comprehend. The future empress, stunned by the ruler's words, began to think that perhaps the emperor was really able to read her thoughts. As her mind raced for answers, Leonhart, as if reading her thoughts, emphasized that their conversation was not only about the future of the Lupion Empire, but also about Terella's own path that she was about to take. The wind caressed Terella's pink hair, creating playful swirls. At that moment, the girl felt that the air was filled with anticipation, and she stood in bewilderment, trying to unravel what secrets were hidden behind this wind and what to expect from the mysterious man, Leonhart. The moon, as if embarrassed by its light, hid behind a dense cloud. Darkness enveloped Terella, and the emperor's face, barely visible in this darkness, became even more enigmatic and mysterious, as if the personification of the secrets of the night. At this moment, the princess felt that she was about to encounter something unknown and unexplored. The couple stood at a distance of a meter, as if on an invisible border separating their worlds. Silence hung in the air, as if the reluctance to disturb this moment created an invisible wall between them. None of them dared to break the silence, as if afraid to destroy the fragile atmosphere in which time seemed to stand still. The black-haired guy sat down silently at the table, his facial expression mysteriously hiding his intentions. Terella, her gaze deftly floating between shadow and light, could not guess what the emperor was up to. There was a sense of anticipation in the room, as if there was a secret in the air that was about to be revealed. Leonhart smiled mysteriously and remarked that it would be awkward if everyone knew about the princess's secret power. The girl's gaze was filled with misunderstanding, and she looked at the man, trying to figure out what he meant. Leonhart looked carefully at Terella and said that she had a special power that could be the key to something important. The girl could not hide her surprise and fear of the unknown future. She silently listened to the Emperor's words, trying to comprehend the meaning of her holiness in this world. Terella felt her whole life suddenly turn upside down. Leonhart's gaze was filled with anticipation and some kind of secret joy. He continued talking, describing what seemed like an incredible twist of fate. For her, this was not just a stage in life, but a kind of meeting with history, unknown and mysterious. Terella could not believe that her fate had become so significant for the entire continent. This was the first time the girl heard that someone knew about her holiness, and this was something that did not fit into her idea of herself. Terella felt that everything around her had changed, as if the magic of this mysterious confession had spread throughout the castle. The princess looked at Leonhart, trying to figure out what kind of secret was hidden behind this word. In difficult moments, Terella's magic became her protection, allowing her to survive difficult times. With these gifts, she could resist illness, strengthen her body with the power of will, and influence the world around her with the power of thought. But these abilities remained a secret, hidden deep in her heart. Terella, immersed in deep thought, resolutely denied her holiness, hoping that this was just an incredible accident. She tried to find a rational explanation for her magical abilities, rejecting the idea that her soul could carry anything supernatural within it. But Leonhart, with full understanding of the power that resided in Terella, only chuckled at her desperate attempts to refute the fact of her holiness. For him, the patron of her destiny, this was a bright and great moment that he had been waiting for a long time. Terella continued to insist that all her unusual abilities were just a coincidence, the result of strange circumstances. She could not accept that something supernatural was awakening in her. Looking at Leonhart incredulously, she expressed her perplexed position and still did not understand where the Emperor got his information about her secret powers. Leonhart, with a smile of understanding, only nodded his head, indicating that the answers to her questions would be revealed over time. Terella, in accordance with her guesses, began to assume that Leonhart may have been watching her from the shadows, carefully studying her every action and features. Scenarios came to her mind about how he could use his resources to learn about the princess's magical abilities. Terella suddenly remembered that despite her holiness, she had never used her magical abilities. All this time she lived relying on her human qualities, not paying attention to her exceptional natural talent. Terella felt that this whole paradox surrounding her abilities made her fate even more confusing, and she became determined to find out the truth that she did not even suspect. Leonhart looked at his bride with a serious look in his eyes, and asked if she knew what was happening on the continent. Terella, sighing, replied that now the whole world is collapsing before our eyes. At that moment, she realized that the Emperor carries within himself not only power over the state, but also the burden of responsibility for the fate of many people. She was to become not only an empress, but also a witness to events that shaped the future of the continent. Decades passed, and the world tree, which was once the source of life for the entire continent, withered and died. The dense forests where nature once flourished are now places of wasteland and wasteland. Rivers and lakes have dried up, leaving only dried-up riverbeds. Ecosystems collapsed and many species of plants and animals disappeared. Humanity is faced with challenges related to the lack of resources and the struggle for survival. After the death of the world tree, the winds of death began to sweep plague and natural disasters across the continent. Unstable weather has exacerbated the situation, making normal food growing almost impossible. People began to face constant hunger and lack of resources. The plague, spread by the winds of death, claimed the lives of thousands and left behind empty, parched lands. The drought that tormented the land became a source of destructive fires that consumed everything in their path. Forests turned to ashes, and wild animals, deprived of their natural habitat, came out of the forests, attacking people in search of food. The Emperor looked questioningly at Terella, asking her whether she understood why everyone around her was so tense and awaiting the birth of a saint. Terella, in turn, felt the ruler's gaze, realizing that the question carried a secret that she had not yet realized. The princess, bowing her head in embarrassment, admitted to the emperor that she did not know the reasons why everyone was so worried about the upcoming birth of the saint. She felt how important events related to her personal life overtook her, leaving her in the dark and lost in the streams of mysterious circumstances. Liebenfell, looking into Terella's eyes, smiled and said that in his understanding, holiness is not just a sign of high morality, but a special gift, a manifestation of divine love. He did not betray any doubt that inside the girl lay something amazing and important for everyone, despite her own doubts and fears. Liebenfell argued that the return of life to the continent depended on the saint turning to the deity Samula. He apparently saw in Terella hope for changing the harsh fate of the continent, and now gave her the responsibility for possible salvation. The princess, embarrassed, asked the emperor why he was scaring her, although she knew that he saw in her some kind of key to change on the continent. The emperor explained that many people experience fear of the unknown and unpredictable, especially when the usual order of things collapses. Liebenfell tried to free Terella from this fear, arguing that it was in her, in an ordinary person, that salvation for the world was ripening. He appealed to deeper feelings and needs, inviting his future empress to understand holiness as an internal gift, and not simply the arbitrariness of divine intervention. Terella clenched her fists, anger flickering dimly in her eyes. She felt Liebenfell delving into her thoughts, revealing herself to her. But in response to her anger, the emperor did not change his expression. He simply looked at her, as if reading every vibration of her feelings. At that moment, the girl realized that in front of her was not just a person, but someone who saw much further than ordinary views. Terella felt that her soul seemed to be revealed before Liebenfell's gaze, like an open book. In his eyes, it seemed as if he was reading not only her thoughts, but also those subtle nuances of her feelings. It created a feeling of complete exposure, as if he had penetrated the very depths of her being. At that moment, the girl realized that this was not just a man, but someone who had the extraordinary ability to see behind the facade and understand her on a level that she considered incomprehensible. Terella decided with conviction that she would not allow anyone to know about her holiness. However, before she had time to enclose her secret in the very depths of her soul, Liebenfell, as if reading her thoughts, had already perceived it with concern and curiosity. Liebenfell, with a sly look in his eyes, warned Terella that any attempt by her to escape would result in her holiness being revealed. The threat lay not only in leaving the imperial palace, but also in the fact that her secret could be made public, becoming a subject of discussion for the entire continent. Liebenfell noted that although it would be interesting if the saint appeared to people now, it was unlikely that anyone would believe that she would save the world. Liebenfell insisted that Terella not deny her holiness. She began to object, saying that she had no need to lie to the emperor. Ultimately, Liebenfell suggested that the princess go to the temple. Perhaps this was to test her holiness, or perhaps to clarify the details of their common path. The girl faced an unexpected turn in her life, and the tension between her and the emperor only intensified. Terella was shocked by the offer to go to the temple, and Liebenfell clarified that the high priest at the temple would be able to confirm her holiness. Perhaps this unexpected situation added new complications to her already troubled fate, and the girl was left bewildered when faced with the emperor's demands. Terella felt the tension in the room become thick, like an electrical charge. Liebenfell continued to talk about the high priest, instilling in her that this sage had special abilities. The emperor's gaze pierced her like a laser, and she realized that she could not hide her essence from the gaze of the one standing in the temple. Terella suddenly realized that her attempts to hide her secret were in vain. She looked intensely at Liebenfell and asked decisively if he was threatening her now. In response to her question, silence hung in the room, as if time stood still, waiting for a decision that would change the princess's fate. Liebenfell stood up from his chair, his high status not detracting from his ability to listen carefully. The man said that Terella uses too harsh words and that no one is going to harm her. Terella, feeling that she would not be able to escape unnoticed, quietly considered her options. Moments flashed in her eyes of how she could act quickly, but at the same time she realized that such a step could have unpredictable consequences. The girl's plans were to stun the ruler and escape, but such a move could have been too ill-conceived. Liebenfell, standing in front of Terella, elaborated on his thoughts about the temple, claiming that it was not leading her anywhere, and that if he really wanted to do it, it would happen instantly, without further thought. His words remained cryptic, and although he did not directly threaten, there was uncertainty and fear of possible consequences in the air. Levenfell, looking at Terella, stated that he was actually striving for something completely opposite to what she might have assumed. This statement caused a stupor in the girl. She felt how all her ideas about the Emperor's intentions were radically changing, and now she was faced with a new, unexpected development of events. Levenfell, emphasizing his words, added that Terella's powers are a secret that should not be revealed to the world. His eyes shone with a strange mixture of interest and caution, creating the feeling that the whole world could be inside the mysterious man's gaze. For the first time, the princess felt that this man could offer her something more than just protection from the tyranny of her family. Terella, watching Levenfell, noticed that a mysterious determination appeared in his gaze. His eyes became even more piercing, as if an unknown force had awakened in them. The girl felt that this moment could turn their entire fate around, and she was looking forward to solving the mystery that the Emperor was hiding within himself. Terella, meeting Levenfell's gaze again, could not help but notice a strange change in his appearance. The hair, which was black during the day, now radiated an extraordinary shine or changed shade. This situation added mystery to their meeting, making the girl think about the possible secrets hidden in this changeable detail. Terella noticed in amazement that standing in front of her was no longer the black-haired Levenfell, but an emperor with snow-white hair. The change in hair and eyebrow color seemed incredible, adding to the mystery of his appearance. The girl could not help but succumb to surprise, trying to unravel the mystery of this unusual transformation. Terella stood in bewilderment, wavering between the thought that she had made a mistake and the feeling that this was a completely different person in front of her. The Emperor's blonde hair and his transformation confused her perception, making her doubt the reality of what was happening. Uncertainty and mystery surrounded this moment, causing the girl a feeling of misunderstanding and puzzlement. The man slowly approached Terella, his expression radiating determination. By talking about protection, he was trying to make her feel safe. The girl stood there, puzzled and absorbed in internal thoughts, not knowing how to react to these unexpected changes. Levenfell said in a low, convincing voice that his desire to protect not only the princess, but also her secret was deeply rooted in his determination. The Emperor's hand rested on the top button of his shirt, as if hinting that secrets were like threads that could be untied. Terella, puzzled, could not understand the meaning of the Emperor's actions, because just a moment ago they were discussing her strength. Questions flashed through her mind, twisted images of possible scenarios, leaving her confused as to what was happening next. The soft light of the moon, playing on his toned muscles, emphasized the majesty of Levenfell's physique. The shadows caressing his abs created a play of light and darkness, as if inviting the gaze deeper into the mystery of the moment. Levenfell held Terella's hand like something precious, like a pearl he had just discovered. His gaze was full of warmth and attention, and his confident words seemed to melt in the air, creating an invisible connection between them. Terella, embarrassed and irritated at the same time, tried to maintain composure, but the color on her face only intensified, expressing her inner turbulent emotions. Levenfell took Terella's hand in his, as if wanting to emphasize their connection. His touch was gentle, and there was a confidence in his voice designed to calm the girl. The man told her not to worry. The words sounded like a gentle promise, filling the space with warmth and safety. The man put the frightened girl's hand on his chest, causing her to shout "God" as soon as she felt the touch of the Emperor's body. Apparently, the already shocked Terella almost fainted from this turn of events. Taking the girl's hand, the Emperor allowed her to touch his torso, which caused her shock and disbelief, because Terella did not know that she was allowed to touch Levenfell. She realized that the forces he claimed to know about her holiness were incredibly intimate. The mutual tension between them only intensified, and the girl found herself in a state of shock, realizing the unexpected turn of events. The Emperor, remaining calm, feeling the girl in his arms, noticed her confusion. In a dark room, illuminated only by moonlight, they stood in silence. The girl, realizing that she could touch the Emperor, felt internal struggle and uncertainty, not preparing for such a development of events. Terella, pushing aside the Emperor's shirt a little, noticed a mysterious tattoo on his sternum. The dark pattern, as if alive, attracted her attention, and in the moonlight it acquired a special mystery. At that moment, she realized that the Emperor's secrets were still far from being revealed, and this symbol became a kind of riddle that had to be solved. Terella, carefully examining the tattoo on the ruler's sternum, suddenly realized that this image was a tree branch that she had heard about. Understanding came like a flash. It was a magical barrier, a seal, just above his heart. This symbol seemed to carry not only the mystery of Leonhart, but also powerful magic, which was embodied in the form of this mysterious tattoo. With the first rays of the sun after the death of the World Tree, a real nightmare began. The drought was exacerbated by powerful fires that seemed to devour everything in their path. Wild animals, deprived of their habitat, began to attack people leaving their homes in search of food. In a world tormented by disasters after the death of the World Tree, people were in deep despair. Their godlike beliefs seemed destroyed, and there was no hope for higher powers to intervene. However, during this dark time, a mysterious alchemist named Jeram appeared. Jeram, in his quest to recreate the power lost with the death of the World Tree, conducted a daring experiment, which he called Ferdiak. He extracted the sap from the last remaining branches of the dead tree, bringing them to his alchemy laboratory. Jeram, having made a deal with the darkness in his soul and hiding under the guise of a noble mission to save the world, conducted his inhumane experiments in a closed alchemical laboratory complex. His goal was to restore the lost energy and balance in the world after the death of the World Tree, but the methods he used bordered on madness. The sap extracted from the last remnants of the dead tree had indescribable magical powers, but its effect on the human body was extremely destructive. As soon as the juice entered the body, it began to transform living human tissue, causing them a kind of metamorphosis. Desperate to prevent their fate, people took extreme measures, carving a design for a protective barrier over their hearts. However, over time they became convinced that these efforts were in vain. Ritual incisions and symbols created in desperation seemed but a pale imitation of protection against the mighty power of the dead tree. Authorities and ordinary citizens, in anger and despair, united in search of the alchemist Jeram and those associated with his dangerous experiments. The newspapers were full of reward advertisements for information leading to his arrest, but like the disappearance of the wind, Jeram and his accomplices disappeared from attention, like a flame consumed by the darkness of the night. Terella, boldly looking at the Emperor, involuntarily drew attention to the strange seal on his chest. With curiosity in her voice, there was a question that she had thought she was afraid to ask for so long. Why is there this mysterious seal over Leonhart's heart? What does it mean? The Emperor, looking into Terella's eyes, replied with a mysterious smile that he was the first and last to survive these experiments. This seal is his way of protecting his heart from the threat that now lurks around the entire world. Terella, with quiet fear in her voice, asked, "Did you know that the participants who survive these experiments are executed?" Leonhart looked at Terella, his gaze expressing the knowledge that the participants in the experiments were being executed. The Emperor stated that in one of the peace agreements in which he participated while still a prince, the exception of the death penalty was prescribed for participants in the experiments. His story conveyed an understanding of the difficult decisions that sometimes have to be made in exceptional circumstances. The black-haired guy expressed his desire, explaining that he told the whole story to the girl because he wanted her to test her powers on him. There was a challenge and some mystery in his words. Leonhart noticed that when they shared their secrets, they no longer had anything to fear. There was a frankness and a certain generality in his words. Terella stood silently, overwhelmed with thoughts, not understanding how to act in this unusual situation. Terella stood there in disbelief, trying to figure out how to use her powers on Leonhart, and her eyes reflected confusion at this unexpected opportunity. Terella thought, putting her hand to her chin, and was perplexed that Leonhart wanted to experience the magic of the saint so much. The girl gently put her hands on the Emperor's chest, and he put his palm on hers as if showing how to do it correctly. The man looked straight into Terella's eyes and asked if she wanted to push him away and run away. The princess, without having time to utter a word, was immediately grabbed by Leonhart by the waist with a slight movement. Terella tried to push the ruler away and asked him to back off and not make hasty conclusions. Suddenly, something caught the girl's attention. Bright flashes of light were reflected in her pupils and illuminated strands of light pink hair. The mysterious branch pattern on Leonfel's body suddenly lit up with a bright yellow light, which greatly surprised the couple. Terella did not lower her hands from the man's torso, still amazed at her strength and magical tricks. The girl did not understand what had just happened and whether it was even real. Her eyes were full of shock and surprise. Terella was afraid to say anything at all. The man again changed his hair color from blonde to black and asked the princess if she remembered his promise. Leonfel recalled that his promise was not to tell anyone the princess's secret. With one hand, the man took Terella by the waist, and with the other, he held her hand. The ruler said that he asks the girl in return to treat him every night. She was a little surprised and did not seem to understand the question. Her bright green eyes looked intently at the emperor. Terella asked Leonfel his request, to which he only leaned closer to the girl, making her more and more embarrassed and accordingly blush. The man asked the princess to be next to him, and for Terella to use her magic on him. The emperor looked straight into the girl's eyes and waited for an answer. Loud sounds were coming from somewhere in the castle. Someone was talking very actively about the fact that the ruler would soon marry some girl. Two servants were discussing the upcoming wedding, constantly gesturing with their hands. One girl asked if it was true that Leonfel had found his chosen one and who she was. Another explained that the emperor was marrying a princess from the kingdom of Lupeon. The servant was perplexed that these were not just rumors, but the truth, to which the second only confirmed her guesses. The girl shared with her colleague that she had heard that aristocrats from all over the kingdom had already been sent invitations to the wedding. The assistants throughout the palace were discussing the upcoming event, surprised by such news. One of the girls told the other that everyone was talking about how the emperor cared so much about his future wife that he did not allow anyone into her chambers except the maids on duty. One of the servants also said that he saw the princess only once from afar, and that she was very beautiful, as if the goddess Samula herself had become a person. The next couple of servants, while they were carrying food to someone from the palace, said that Terella was very thin, that it was scary that the wind would blow her away. They suggested that it was because of this that the emperor sent the girl a lot of delicious food. Each of the assistants in the castle was very worried about questions about the future empress. The girls continued the topic of the princess's secrecy, because not every person passing by could get into her bedroom. They wondered who had received permission to enter Terella's chambers, and whether the princess was keeping any secrets. One of the servants was surprised that someone could even take the place of the empress. She added that if the princess knows how to win her over and they want to follow her, then that's wonderful. Terella lay face down on the bed, apparently not understanding how to move on and what to do in such a situation. The girl was angry that Jeram, just like a good advisor, quickly organized the wedding and deprived the princess of any chance of escape. Terella noticed that Leonfel was also no slouch. He constantly showered her with gifts, various decorations, and money. The girl was infuriated that the emperor believed that since she agreed to become empress, he could shower her with gifts and put her in the room of the previous empress. In addition, Terella was immediately settled in the royal palace of Damascus, which also surprised her, and this palace is close to the Tree of Peace, a place where even in chaos the blessing of the tree remains. But until now, not a single emperor has given anyone an entire palace. This awkward situation touched Terella's soul. The girl began to punch and kick the bed on which he was lying because the emperor's palace was damn nice, and the room in which she lived was right next to Leonfel's chambers. The girl calmed down and turned on her side, thinking about her path in this life. The dress, jewelry, the bedroom of the former empress, the castle of Damascus, all these are just amenities with which the emperor bribed his victim, Terella. The girl realized that the life that Leonfel provided her is what the common people consider luxury. The princess closed her eyes, trying to filter her thoughts and come to some useful conclusion. Terella realized that while enjoying this luxurious life, she was afraid of returning to her past, filled with fear and hunger. As a result, the girl came to the conclusion that she and the emperor were in the same boat, so she should trust him. The future empress could not understand how the ruler of Leonfel was able to survive the Ferdiac experiment. The girl talked to the emperor about how she had never heard of anyone surviving such torment from an evil alchemist. Leonfel replied that fairy tales are direct evidence of the opposite. Terella was interested in whether the experiment was carried out after the black-haired man became emperor, or whether Leonfel was directly involved in the event as a prince. The man with a smile on his face told the princess that his body was fine now, and that she had nothing to worry about. The ruler said that thanks to the pink-haired girl and her magic, he feels fine, but when the next night comes, the magic of the seal will begin to work again and the color of Leonfel's hair will change. Terella was surprised that this happened to a man all the time, and then she realized that she had really survived a terrible experiment. The girl was surprised that during all this time, no one had learned about such metamorphoses occurring with the emperor every night, to which he asked her if Terella had heard that the ruler locked himself in his chambers in the evenings and got drunk. The princess immediately realized that these were just rumors, to which Leonfel only laughed and added that this was a good alibi that helps to exclude unwanted meetings. The man shared that when he was a prince and there was much less interest in him, Leonfel managed to hide from prying eyes much easier, but now everything was different. The emperor looked with his bright yellow eyes directly at Terella standing in front of him, and abruptly fell silent. Leonfel admitted that because of this, he needs the princess, because he no longer wants to hide from others. The girl just swallowed nervously, not knowing what reaction to give her. Silence filled the space. Everyone who was even indirectly involved in the Ferdiac experiment was mercilessly killed. No one cared about the gender, age, or place in society of those who took part in such an event. If Leonfel's secret were revealed, not only would the continent be plunged into war, but it would also become a new challenge to the gods. War would break out both inside and outside the empire, and ultimately the ruler would still be defeated. Terella was worried that the emperor would come to her every night and undress her so that she could use her power. The girl asked Leonfel whether the high priest and healers could help him if her powers were capable of such a thing. The black-haired man repeated that it was his and Terella's secret, and that no one should know about it. The girl anxiously asked what would happen to her if she let it slip. The emperor answered with a calm tone, waving his hand, that he would most likely just kill Terella, which seriously frightened the princess. Leonfel's future wife did not understand how he could trust her, because they barely knew each other, and she was wondering how the ruler realized that she was a saint. The man smiled sarcastically and replied that he was just guessing. Terella immediately disputed this point and said that the emperor was sure that she had superhuman powers. The girl understood that only her mother knew about her powers, so she tried to knock an answer out of Leonfel. When the princess wanted to make some assumption, the man's eyebrows rose sharply, and beads of sweat began to flow down his face. His eyes were wider than anything. The emperor was nervous that Terella would reveal exactly how he learned of her holiness. The girl asked if Leonfel knew her mother, and this question relaxed the man. The emperor laid his head on his forehead, trying to relieve the tension, and after a short pause, replied that he did not know who Terella's mother was. The man said that he most likely knew that the saint could heal him, and Leonfel's body reacted on its own. He was not very confident in his statements, so the princess was a little surprised by this behavior. The emperor tried to translate and said that there was no problem in all this. The man repeated that in exchange for concealing his secret about participating in the experiment, he would remain silent about Terella's magical powers. The girl was silent for a long time and did not understand what to answer, because she knew that if she agreed, the princess would become an accomplice of the emperor. And if in this scenario the couple is discovered and the secrets of Leonfel are learned, then the girl will also be immediately executed for complicity. Terella quickly realized that the consequences of revealing secrets between her and the emperor were too different. She shouted at the ruler, trying to find out how he could calmly say such things. Leonfel, with a wide smile on his face, mockingly said that if the princess did not agree to this, then she would need to go to the temple, tell the whole truth, and return to the gods. The girl began to worry and decided to ask if it was possible to somehow solve this problem. The idea of escaping from the palace flashed through her thoughts again. The man looked carefully into Terella's eyes and asked the girl if she was thinking about escaping again. The princess responded only with silence. Leonfel thoughtfully explained that it would be difficult for the girl to hide when everyone finds out who she really is. Then all the citizens of the continent will rush to search for the saint. Terella became even more nervous after such conversations. The emperor said that if he and the girl had agreed, then she would also be in the black. In the meantime, no big disaster happened. The princess could do whatever her heart desired. Leonfel tried to bribe Terella, telling her that as an empress she would have much more power than anyone could imagine. His thoughtful face and malicious smile made the princess think again. The man began to say something about omnipotence over mere mortals, that he could make them dance to his tune. But before he could finish speaking, Terella immediately interrupted him and said that she agreed to all his conditions. The princess decided for herself that it didn't matter whether it would be easy or difficult. The main thing was that any problem could be solved. After all, if not she, then the emperor will sooner or later be killed by some cruel people. Leonhart looked at the girl and said that her look was full of determination, which he couldn't help but like. Terella constantly thought that she and the emperor were in the same boat. This fate forced her to hold out as long as possible, because the ruler always needs a girl healer. Terella understood that thanks to her powers, she would never die from any disease, even the weakest one, which could shake up Leonhart's health. And yet, it was not clear to the princess how exactly the emperor knew about her holiness. The girl decided that if anything seemed suspicious to her, she would run away to another country and tell everyone that the black-haired man took part in the Ferdiac experiment. Terella raised her hand with fingers bent, except for the index finger, and realized that she only needed 1 year. Exactly 1 year later, the emperor must let the girl go to her own devices, if, of course, she holds out. The princess suddenly took all her will into a fist and squeezed it until she was blue in the face, telling herself that she could handle it. Even in such difficult moments, Terella's self-confidence never left her for a second, because she wanted to achieve a free life at any cost and make the Lupeon family answer for everything. Sunset, end of another day. For ordinary residents of both kingdoms, it was just another tiring day of work, but for the nobility, especially Terella and the emperor, it was something more. The royal family dined at one large table. Suddenly, the younger sister decided to ask her father what they should do if their pink-haired sister did become the empress. Everyone turned to the head of the family, expecting an answer from him. The brother immediately laughed and explained that a girl like Terella would certainly not be able to take the throne, and that if this happened, then let the guy's other leg break. The older sister agreed with her brother's words and said that if the girl returned home, it would only be as a corpse. Shh. The younger one lowered her head, was silent for a while, and added that Terella was quite good-looking, and this could help her in her relationship with the emperor. The girl considered the saint the most beautiful of all those she had ever seen. Everyone bowed their heads and fell sharply silent, because the relatives were not ready for such a conversation. None of them wanted to continue this dialogue, and for a moment the space was filled with silence. The head of the family decided to break the calm and said that Terella is an ordinary girl, only she constantly contradicts everyone and has the most terrible character in the world. My father believed that children of noble families and royal blood should be grateful to the family for saving them from marriage to this princess. The man added that Terella and Leonhart are 2 pairs of boots, because the emperor, too, isn't all right in the head. So, in his opinion, even if the girl does not return back to her homeland, even as a corpse. Since Leonhart was a cruel emperor to everyone, Lupeon believed that the princess's future husband was cruel, and that the imperial palace would become her tomb. The ruler's children looked at him with slight shock on their faces, carefully listening to his every word. Lupeon added that if Terella does return, it will not be a disaster for him, because King Shalom needs a chosen one, so if she returns, there is somewhere to send the girl. The young people began to discuss that more than 30 now, former queens had fallen at the hands of King Shalom, who was already over 70 years old. The green-haired guy noticed that Karayan, the brother of the green-eyed scum, should return soon and that he would look for the girl. Silence fell again in the dining room. Apparently no one thought that someday a hostile brother might show up. Karayan is one of the strongest magicians, who is unlikely to be defeated by anyone on the continent. Everyone around knew that the connection between this guy and Terella was special, and that they were ready to give their lives for each other. The elder sister suggested telling the most powerful magician that the princess had simply decided to leave. The brother agreed and added that if she dies in the emperor's palace, then there is nothing to be afraid of, that the family will be revealed. The father silently cut a piece of meat and thought about something for a long time, not really wanting to share his thoughts. As a result, after he wiped himself with a napkin, the man said that Karayan was now investigating cases related to the epidemic. so he would not return to the royal castle soon. The emperor ordered his children to be careful so that news of Terella's departure did not reach the magician. Lupion looked into the eyes of his relatives and said that Karayan should be the last one to know about these events, and only after he finishes all his business and returns. The father planned that while this happened, the princess's funeral would be in full swing. At this time, Terella was again treating her future husband in her chambers. Streams of power passed painlessly through the tissue, healing Leonhart from the evil curse. The girl still could not get used to this turn of events, although this was not the first time she had treated men. The princess considered the emperor to be some kind of crazy person, and a person without a sense of compassion, but at the same time attractive and desirable, and what's even worse, in fact it was her husband. Thoughts as strange as for Terella haunted her, and it became increasingly difficult to hide. Leonhart looked at the girl again with his piercing gaze, intending to understand her train of thought. The man deftly straightened his hair and asked the princess if she was thinking about something strange now, to which the girl immediately began to deny and say that everything was fine. Terella turned away from the emperor, putting her hands forward and tried to prove her innocence, to which the man replied that for some reason she blushed very red. The girl immediately thought that Leonhart was a rather observant man, from whom it was impossible to hide any thoughts. The princess began to apologize and told the emperor not to misunderstand her, to which he was slightly surprised. Terella admitted that she blushed not because she touched the ruler's body, because even contact with Counselor Jeram could have caused such a reaction in her. The black-haired man told the princess that it was actually terrible, to which she was very surprised and could not understand what the point was. Leonhart said that if this is all true, then someone will really see the blood. The girl still could not understand what the emperor was leading to. Terella said that it would be much more convenient for her to treat the ruler if he did not undress. Each time was more and more difficult for the girl. She still could not get used to this monotonous work and a bunch of actions. The man told the princess that he much preferred to receive the power of the saint without clothes. This statement surprised and confused Terella. The girl asked why Leonhart liked it better without clothes, because every time he had to spend time undressing. The man looked away and smiled. Suddenly, he quickly leaned towards the princess and grabbed her by the waist, getting closer and closer to her face. Terella only managed to put her hands in front of her, trying to push the emperor away from her at least a little. But Leonhart was unshakable. He quickly approached the girl's face and, finding himself almost near her lips, asked what she herself thought about this. The princess blushed more and more, realizing that such a small distance between her and the emperor was not very comfortable. The girl tried to somehow avoid such awkwardness, so she, bowing her head down, told the ruler that if he continued to behave this way, Terella would go to bed before midnight. The princess threatened that in this case the man would have a hard time. He would again start locking himself in his bedroom at night, pretending that he was drinking. Leonhart, without allowing the girl to finish speaking, interrupted her and told her not to worry. The color did not leave the face of the pink-haired princess, and she was waiting for all this to stop as quickly as possible. The man took Terella's hand in his hand and put it on his chest, saying that if she doesn't like this attitude towards herself, then he will stop. The girl was silent, meeting her gaze with her future husband. Suddenly, something caught the princess's attention. She opened her bright green eyes wide and looked at something that shocked her. The girl didn't understand since when did the emperor do whatever he wanted when Terella said what she liked. The girl stood opposite Leonhart and told him that she was very worried about the wedding ceremony, which would take place very soon. The black-haired guy was happy about this outcome, because now he knew that he was not the only one nervous about this. This was also the first time for the emperor, so he invited the princess to discuss everything at the table. The future empress decided that she would not say anything to the cunning ruler. The girl sat down on the sofa, and after that Leonhart turned to her. Terella was clearly not happy. She frowned and waited for what the emperor would tell her. The man was also sitting on the couch, crossing his legs. Parallel to his speech, he imposingly wagged his free leg, trying to tune in to talk about the wedding. The emperor suggested that the girl not invite King Lupion to the ceremony if the princess did not want to see him there. In this case, the man simply will not send an invitation to the royal palace, and they will not come. Terella, although she hated all her living relatives, still did not understand why Leonhart was so sure that she did not want to see her family. The man admitted to the princess that it seemed to him that she did not want to invite her father and sisters to the wedding, so he decided so. The girl sharply closed her lips and swallowed nervously, a drop of sweat flowing down her cheek. She didn't understand how the emperor knew about her thoughts, because Terella didn't tell him anything, and he already understood everything himself. The princess began to prove to Leonhart that no matter what her family was, she should still invite them to the wedding. The girl sat in shock, not understanding how the emperor guessed this. Terella reiterated that she wanted her sisters and brothers to receive invitations and attend the ceremony. The emperor tried to hint as gently as possible that he understood the girl and that she could trust him, but she did not listen to Leonhart and said that then she herself would see how the whole strange family would begin to be consumed by envy. The princess began to smile evilly, looking at the emperor, and said that it was rare to be able to enjoy such a spectacle, and that she had to see it in person in order to then go to bed in a good mood. The girl shared that she couldn't wait for this day, and the ruler simply wanted to avoid inviting Terella's enemies. Such a speech inspired Leonhart, and he smiled widely, like a small child. The girl also smiled, looking at him, as if they had just discussed some kind of joke. The man looked carefully at the princess and seemed to be expecting some trick from her. The emperor broke the moment's silence and asked Terella that she could really be so cruel. This seriously surprised the girl, because she did not expect such a reaction from her future husband. The princess explained that her behavior was due to her relationship with her mother. Leonhart didn't quite understand what was happening, so he decided to ask again. Terella's surprised face suddenly changed to a sad one. She lowered her head and began her story. The girl shared that her mother loved her so much that everyone else could only envy their relationship. The mother taught the princess to love herself and never give up, even in the most difficult situations. Terella's mother has always been a persistent woman, and even though there was only one person in the world who loved the princess, this love was still stronger than everyone else. Mom constantly told the girl that she did not need to hang her nose, but straighten her shoulders. The woman said that if Terella had not done anything wrong and was confident in herself, then she should not despair. Mom insisted that the princess had her whole life ahead of her, and they would love her endlessly. She wanted to give her daughter the whole world, but did not have time. Leonhart said that the girl's mother was a wise woman and a good person. Terella added that she was told that when she was born, her mother never hugged her. But when the girl was 3, everything changed. Perhaps this behavior was caused by the mother's shame due to the fact that she did nothing for her child. The emperor commented that few people could, in principle, completely side with their daughter. Leonhart considered the woman an amazing person, to which the princess only silently looked at the emperor. Apparently, it seemed to her that no one shared her opinion about her mother. Terella did not understand whether her future husband had any good memories of her mother, because he had a strange expression on his face. The girl realized that during the entire period of communication between her and the emperor, she knew practically nothing about him or his family. After a short silence, Leonhart began to talk about something, which infuriated the girl, who did not understand why the man was behaving so strangely. The emperor said that since the princess wanted it so much, he would send wedding invitations to her family. Terella was immediately delighted by this statement and said that she would look forward to meeting her relatives. Leonhart smiled sincerely and supported the girl's decision about the wedding. He decided to choose the fastest way to deliver invitations. Apparently, he and the princess began to improve. A few weeks later, the Lupoan family arrived in the kingdom of Leonhart. The emperor and his new wife, Terella, came to the port to greet the guests. The brother, father, and 2 sisters stood directly in front of the couple and bowed their heads to them, greeting Leonhart, son of the empire. The princess realized that the long-awaited day had come. Now she would prove to her family who she was and what she was capable of. The emperor decided to interrupt the long worship, and told the family that it took them a long time to get to the Leonhart Empire, to which they were taken aback, but tried not to show it. The man continued his speech, saying that this should be a great honor for the family, because never before in his life had Leonhart had to wait so long for guests. Terella's father tried to somehow justify himself, but his arguments were illogical and strange, and his voice trembled like an autumn leaf. It seems that the future Empress did not even listen to the words of her dad. She was only happy with how the events turned out, because watching such a spectacle was more pleasant than ever. but the girl never thought that she would ever be able to watch her relatives bow their heads before her. Leonhart suddenly laughed and said that he just wanted to cheer up the guests after such a long journey. The man said ironically that it seemed he had gone a little overboard with this. At this time, Terella only stood and looked at the emperor, not understanding the course of his further actions. The girl's father raised his head a little and rubbed the back of his head, and then, stuttering, said that he was already scared. The old man began to laugh at the top of his lungs and say that Leonhart has an amazing sense of humor. At this time, the emperor only looked down on him as the family laughed incessantly. After several moments of such a speech, the ruler decided to interrupt this noise and din, so he told his relatives that in fact, there was some truth in this joke. They immediately raised their heads, again shocked by Leonhart's statements. The stately man continued his speech, talking about how the family's journey was not so long, unlike the princess, who took 3 months to get to Leonhart. The emperor looked again with his piercing gaze into the eyes of each family member, as if reading their thoughts. Leonhart said that there are many good engineers in the kingdom of Lupaon. Then why did the carriage made of rotten boards take 3 months to reach its destination? This seemed to touch my father's soul. It was clear that he did not know how to justify himself to the ruler. The emperor ironically asked Lupaon, if possible, to bring their engineers to him to train his own. Also, he added that it would not be at all strange if a wheel fell off the carriage while driving, or even better, if it fell apart on the spot. But such a miracle, it turns out, still drives and doesn't even think about breaking down. It was clear that Terella's father was becoming more and more nervous and could not find words. Leonhart emphasized that he was just thinking, and asked the king if he wanted to boast about the miracle of engineering in his kingdom when he sent a lady in a rotten carriage, whose wheel could fall off at any moment, as a potential bride. It seemed that the father was about to go crazy from so many claims. Drops of sweat flowed down his wrinkled forehead. Laughter rang out again. The emperor laughed at the family's reaction to such statements. The man with green hair was confused and did not know what he should do in such a situation. Leonhart said that he had gone too far with the jokes again, and added that he was sure that King Lupaon would definitely not do such a thing to his daughter. The emperor explained that if this is the case, then this is disrespect not only for the princess, but also for the one to whom they sent her. In fact, the family simply spat in the face of the head of the empire. The sisters and brother burned with shame, while the father thought about what to answer Leonhart. The emperor grabbed Terella by the shoulder and turned to the bride's relatives, saying that he considered himself quite hospitable. The man took the girl's hand in his and told her that he would leave the princess alone with her family because they had not seen each other for a long time and had not talked about family matters. Terella quickly realized what was happening, because it was time to listen to her envious sisters, brother, and father. The girl smiled, looking at the relatives in front of her, and answered the emperor with gratitude for his care. The princess called out to her family, naming them one by one. At this time, the relatives themselves stood and looked at the floor or ahead of themselves, not wanting to continue the whole circus that they themselves had started. Terella smiled widely and with a hint of irony in her voice, told her family that she had not seen them for so long and missed them. Already in the palace, the brother and pink-haired sister met again. The guy asked her if it was true that the girl was marrying the emperor. He said this either with rudeness or with sadness, which gave the impression that he and his father, in principle, did not want to send the princess here. Terella only gave her brother an uninterested and empty look, as if the man did not exist next to her. The girl thought that it was very stupid of the green-haired guy to talk to her about something at this moment, because just a couple of minutes ago his father forbade him to even approach the princess until he discussed something with the emperor. The future empress asked the man where her brother Karayan was, because she wanted to see him, and not the faces of her hated relatives. The older sister replied that Karayan was still dealing with the epidemic, so he could not come. She added that there were more problems than they thought, so the matter dragged on. It seemed to Terella that if her brother had found out about her wedding, he would have dropped everything and come. The girl realized that the situation was not going well. While the princess stood in thought in the middle of the room, the elder sister addressed her. The girl turned to her, showing that she was listening to her sister attentively. Greenhair said that she did not understand how it happened that Terella was really going to become empress. The girl replied that this was absurd. First, they send her to the palace to the emperor, and then they are surprised at the result of their work. With a feigned smile, the princess said that the family was thinking about how Leonhart could kill her faster, but in the end they received an invitation to the wedding. The sister was seriously angry and accused Terella of lying, saying that she was the future empress. The emperor's bride turned to her older sister and said that now Terella could do whatever she wanted, no matter how her relatives disliked it. The girl turned around again and examined the entire room, especially her brother and sisters. The princess immediately asked them a question. Did the family understand what was happening at all, and if they wanted to say something to Terella? Everyone around fell silent, unable to find words to continue the dialogue. Apparently, none of the relatives came up with any other reason for the latest ridicule and threats. The girl realized that her family had once again mocked her, and then pretended that nothing had happened. The Empress's plans for her relatives will not change unless they shut up and calm down. The older sister spoke first again, saying that this was all their plan. It would seem that what else could be worse than coming up with this? The brother did not understand why this was said, so he screamed at his sister in bewilderment, demanding clarification. She smiled and repeated again that this was all part of the family plan. The girl told Terella that if they had not sent the princess to the emperor, she would not have become Leonhart's bride. The sister added that if the generous family had forced the girl to go to her betrothed, she would have remained in the kingdom of Lupaon and would still be eating scraps. By this logic, Terella should be grateful for such an act of her relatives. The eldest, while telling this, touched the girl's forehead with her finger, violating her personal space. The sister again said that the princess should appreciate such wonderful relatives who gave her a chance to change her life. At this time, the servants only listened to all the sisters' conversations, without engaging in conversation with the nobility. Terella responded to everything only with silence, not wanting to waste energy arguing with her unreasonable sisters. She realized that it seemed that her family had not yet realized that they were in the princess's palace, and not vice versa. But noticing her brother and younger sister standing behind him, the girl realized that they still remembered where they were. Terella mocked her relatives, who still do not understand that they need to be careful with her, because in this castle the maids will take the side of the future empress anyway. Until now, the girl was just trash under the feet of her sisters and brother, but now it's the other way around. The princess said that if the family was trying to fool her, then at least they pretended to believe in their own words. The older sister began to attack Terella, trying to make her afraid, but she only said that the family did not want to get their hands dirty, because everyone was looking at them, because they were from the royal family, and they did not need such attention. The brother decided to intervene in the girl's conversation and turned to Terella, saying that she thought that she had become an empress and could behave like that, although the wedding had not yet taken place. The girl just turned around and looked at the man with a piercing gaze, and later asked him if he could say something smart and not just any nonsense. The guy tried to somehow influence the princess, threatening her with the fact that now the father in the emperor's office was convincing him to choose another candidate for the role of the chosen one. The brother said that Leonhart probably wants someone better as a wife than Terella, to which she just grinned and made it clear that everything was absolutely wrong. The girl watched as her relatives over and over again got upset over various little things and ruined their plans, and it seemed like they really didn't understand anything. The princess asked the guy if the family had a plan to kill her if she returned to the kingdom of Lupaon. The brother answered in the affirmative and asked if Terella was afraid for herself now. The girl just smiled silently and realized that no one from the family ever thought of apologizing for their actions and bullying. The servant, with a letter about the emperor's decision, went to the center of the room in order to notify everyone about it. The brother immediately ran up to the man and began to tear the sheet from his hands, at the same time saying that Terella had come to an end, the wedding was cancelled, and the girl would return back to the Lupaon Empire. At that time, the princess just stood there, smiling widely, and told the green-haired guy to shut up and start reading the contents of the message. The brother read the text and was horrified. Apparently, there was something there that he clearly did not expect to see. The girl asked the guy if everything was okay with him and the emperor's message, to which the brother only stood and remained silent, not intending to talk about anything. Terella was already sure that Leonhart would marry her, not because he needed more power or lacked a woman, but because he needed the princess's powers. which he would not find in anyone else. The sisters approached the stunned guy and also began to read the emperor's address. Their faces immediately turned pale and wrinkled, and the girls themselves became furious, not understanding what the future empress had done to deserve this. Terella, sitting on the couch, turned to her relatives, saying that tomorrow she would tell the ruler about their intentions to kill the girl. At this time, the maid calmly poured tea for the princess and bowed. The brother and sisters immediately began to justify and say that they knew nothing about any murder and that no one would believe Terella. The faces of the relatives expressed mixed emotions, and they somewhat resembled crazy people. The girl calmly raised her cup of tea and asked her family why they wouldn't believe her. The princess added that all the people present in the room heard the entire conversation. The relatives looked around and realized that in the large room besides them, there were about 5 servants who would definitely not dance to their tune. Terella, with a calm and even mocking tone, said that the family had better hold their tongues if they do not want to be left without them. The girl added that it was time for her relatives to understand that the staff here is not the same as in Lupione, and that no one will cover for them in the princess's palace. Finally, after so many years, justice has triumphed, and now everyone, from the emperor to the servants, will side with Terella. The girl was again sitting at the table and drinking tea, only this time she was talking with Leonhart. She wore a chic blue traditional outfit with her hair tied up. The emperor said that he thought the princess had fun interacting with her family. This statement slightly surprised Terella. The ruler sat opposite her future wife, folded her hands crosswise, and said that the Lupion's mood had clearly improved since their arrival. The girl thoughtfully replied that this was probably true, because it was such a happy meeting. The princess turned to her relatives and asked if they had expected such a trick. The brother and younger sister stood in horror and did not understand whether this was all really happening, and the eldest, putting her hand to her face, looked at Terella in puzzlement. The girl asked what her relatives would do if the emperor found out about everything, and added that the family probably knew about the rumors about Leonhart. The princess said that since she and the company were related, she would give one of them a chance. Family members started shouting at her sister, not understanding what she was talking about. Terella laughed and said that she would forgive everyone if they would bend the knee and apologize for all their actions. The girl considered this idea a wonderful strategy. The princess began to blackmail her relatives and said that the loss of pride, in any case, is better than being without a head. Such statements horrified family members, who had previously been unable to come to terms with their current situation. The space was filled with silence, and the shocked relatives did not understand what they needed to do. So Terella decided to speed up the process by asking them how long the brother and sisters would stand. The decree, "on your knees," sounded sharply and firmly, and the family, as soon as they heard it, immediately fell at the feet of the future empress, not wanting to be executed. The princess just watched everything from above, enjoying this picture. The relatives began to argue which of them bowed down to Terella first. The brother said that he was the first. The older sister said that she was the first, because her pants were dirty from the floor, and the younger one said that as soon as she fell and immediately bowed, she hit her forehead on the floor. The princess just laughed and thought about what she should do, and who in the family should give a chance for pardon. Leonhart turned to his future wife and told her that her relatives looked extremely worried, and the man assumed that the girl had done something to them. The emperor added that the princess should not waste her nerves on each member of the royal family and leave it to the ruler, because even a small mosquito, constantly itching above the ear, can significantly damage the nerves. Terella put the cup of tea on the saucer and calmly told Leonhart that it was not appropriate to wash dirty linen in public, because if the emperor touched on this topic, the problem would move from a personal plane to a political one. The girl insisted that her future husband not interfere in the princess's family problems, because if everything develops into a struggle between the kingdom and the empire, it will bring a lot of problems to everyone. Such a confident and wise speech surprised the emperor, who had no choice but to remain silent. After a few seconds of silence, Leonhart said that after all, Terella looked quite happy, because she really couldn't hide her satisfied smile. The girl, it turns out, completely forgot to keep her face and not show her true pleasure from the dirty tricks committed on her relatives. The emperor said that the princess convinced him, and he would now respect her will. But the future empress could not even imagine that a man whom everyone knows as a ruthless tyrant could turn out to be such a sweet gentleman and a good person. Such conclusions surprised her very much, which she could not hide. Leonhart said that from the very beginning he was wondering why the girl spoke only now, because she didn't have to be shy. Terella asked the emperor if Jeram knew about his constant nocturnal metamorphoses, to which he replied that he did not. The man admitted with a hint of sadness that although he believes his advisor, he still does not want to share such secrets with him. The princess was very shocked by this statement, and she, unable to bear it, shouted out that no one knew about it. The ruler agreed and added that only his future wife knows about his curse. Terella was shocked that only she and no one else had such information. The girl thought that this secret was easy to keep secret, because it was not so obvious, but she still understood that it must be difficult for Leonhart to carry such a burden. The princess continued her thought, saying that Counselor Jeram is always close to the ruler, and it is surprising to her that the emperor managed to keep everything a secret from him for so long. While Terella was actively speaking, someone entered the couple's room without knocking. Leonhart drew attention to the one who entered the room and told the girl that unfortunately, Jeram had no need to appear in the emperor's bedroom at night. The princess turned around and saw the advisor, who had dropped the papers in shock. White sheets with block letters immediately scattered across the floor, and the man himself stood in a stupor, not understanding how to answer the ruler. The space was suddenly enveloped in silence. Terella was also shocked that Jeram eavesdropped on her conversations with Leonhart, and the advisor only asked the emperor in a trembling voice what he and the girl were talking about. The man began to be indignant, saying why he should appear in the imperial bedroom at night and why it was unfortunate. The couple seemed to understand what was happening, and the black-haired man laughed, saying that it was not good to eavesdrop. The blonde guy tried to justify himself, saying that he accidentally overheard his conversation with Terella out of the corner of his ear. Sweat ran down his excited face, and the advisor greedily gasped for air. The girl with a smile on her face tried to calm Jeram down, saying that he shouldn't take Leonhart's words the wrong way, and that they didn't say anything like that. The advisor wiped the sweat from his brow with relief, and said that a weight had been lifted from his shoulders since the lady understood everything. The princess laughed and told the guy not to worry, because she is the choice and preferences of other people. Jeram turned to Terella angrily, and said that it might be better to respect him rather than preferences. The girl found the situation funny, and was sure that the emperor was also delighted. Leonhart said that he had had enough of the jokes, and was interested in what kind of documents his advisor had brought. The pieces of paper lay under Jeram's feet and covered the floor like some kind of carpet. The guy began to pick up important documents from the floor and said that he would now tell us what was what. Having picked up all the sheets, the advisor began to read their contents. He explained that it was a list of aristocratic families who would like to greet the princess before the wedding. The emperor asked Jeram that these letters were from these same families. The advisor confirmed Leonhart's guesses, and Terella began to be indignant that in order to meet all these people, she would need more than 1 year. The emperor told Jeram that the princess did not have so much time for meetings, and asked the guy to refuse everyone. The advisor said that this was not the best choice for the future empress. The ruler took this answer personally and told the young man not to contradict his orders, to which he replied that he was not arguing, but was only doing his job, giving advice. The girl took the documents from the advisor's hands in order to study them. The guy explained to Leonhart that such a decision would lead to Terella becoming an outcast, just like the ruler himself. Jeram added that it's good to have a variety of people around you, even dark horses. For such purposes, the guy selected those people whose connections would be useful for the girl. After studying the documents, the princess asked the advisor if she really should get to know and get close to these people. Jeram explained that it is better not to get close to these aristocrats, because they are not the best people. Terella was shocked by this turn of events, and asked the advisor what he was talking about. The advisor said that among these people there were those who were engaged in illegal activities, for example, working with narcotic drugs. The guy added that such people exist everywhere, and high society is certainly no exception. The emperor said that such acquaintances were useless for the future empress, and that it was not worth contacting these characters. The blonde guy replied that she at least needed to know who they were. The advisor added that the girl will soon become an empress, so she needs to communicate with those around her. But keeping these people close or not contacting them at all is Terella's decision. The girl squeezed the paper in her hands and realized that Jeram was right. She was ready to meet everyone the guy advised her to meet. The princess had a sense of justice, so she understood that since she made a deal with Levenfell and gained the power that allowed her to bring the entire Lupion family to their knees, she would now need to be held accountable for her responsibilities. After some thought, the girl said that she understood what Jeram was talking about. Terella had to decide, to be a lone socialite in this battle, or to win over the aristocrats whom you advise and fight with him on the same side. The advisor listened in surprise to her speech and waited for the moment when he could answer her. After a short silence, the guy looked straight into the princess's eyes and said that she spoke very competently and wisely. The girl, with an undisguised smile on her face, thought that such a competent advisor would not be on her side. Levenfell decided to break the silence and turned to Jeram, saying that Terella was truly amazing. The advisor did not understand why the emperor said this and decided to ask again. The man replied that voluntarily choosing the path of suffering is not easy. The guy answered the ruler that the decision was wise and asked why Levenfell was so happy. He laughed and asked Jeram why his throat had been sore lately and asked if he was getting sick. The advisor asked the emperor what this even meant and whether he wanted to deprive the guy of his job. In his eyes, one could see the confidence that the ruler would not be able to cope with such a burden. Terella watched everything from the side and concluded that although Jeram would not be on her side, he was definitely on Levenfell's side. It is logical that there is hardly a person in this palace who would treat the tyrant emperor as well. The girl wondered if there was anyone with whom the black-haired man would be as comfortable. The princess understood that being close to the emperor, it was only natural that Jeram might fear the sudden appearance of someone like Terella. The girl thought that she would most likely behave like that herself. While talking with the advisor, Levenfell remembered the wedding ceremony and asked the guy how things were going there. Jeram was embarrassed to explain the whole situation because it was too early to talk about anything. The guy said that the hall for the wedding is almost ready. The advisor invited the couple to look at the preparations for the wedding themselves. Terella listened with intrigue to what Jeram was saying and waited for the emperor's answer. The princess and her future husband entered the room. The girl could not contain her admiration for the entire decoration of the hall and the aroma filling the entire space. Terella asked if it was the flowers that had such an intoxicating smell that seemed to clear the girl's mind. Someone also entered the room and asked the party if they liked the ambiance of the ceremony venue. It was Mr. Elihu who shared that the atmosphere was indeed extremely pleasant, thanks to the holy water sprinkled everywhere. The appearance of the golden-haired man shocked everyone around. Terella looked at Eliha and realized that she knew him. She heard that this man was called by the gods themselves and became the youngest high priest. Among all his colleagues, the man had the most powerful connection with holy powers. The advisor approached Elik and began to talk to him about something. After a short conversation, the high priest raised his head and looked straight at the princess. Kindness and interest were visible in his gaze. It was clear that he was a saint. After a couple of moments, Terella realized that this was the man she should avoid, so that no one would recognize her holiness. The girl, seeing Eliha in front of her, immediately hid behind Levenfell, trying not to catch his eye. The high priest greeted the emperor, to which he replied that they had not seen each other for a long time. The ruler's tension was felt even across such a greater distance. Levenfell said that if he had known that Elihu had come to the ceremonial hall, he and Terella would have arrived before he did. The emperor asked the priest if they had disturbed him. The man replied that they had not distracted him at all, and that anyone who thought that the ruler's visit could interfere should be punished by Samula. The girl did not manage to hide for long. The golden-haired man noticed her behind Levenfell's back and asked the princess if she was the one who would marry the emperor. It was clear that Terella no longer had any point in hiding, and it was her turn. Elihu said that he was pleased to meet you, and introduced himself to the girl, calling himself Samula's right hand and her high priest. The princess, stuttering, said that she was the same Terella Lupeon. All she had to do was lean out and the man would immediately reveal her identity, because she felt his aura even when he did nothing. Levenfell tried to somehow explain himself to Elihu, saying that the princess felt out of place in the new place and asked to be understanding of her behavior. The high priest still did not take his eyes off the frightened Terella, and told the emperor that he would treat the girl with understanding. His gaze was somewhat mysterious and incomprehensible, which was even more repulsive. Elihu asked the princess not to worry and continued to look at her, which clearly added to the girl's feeling of discomfort. One wrong move and it seemed that Leonfel's plan was about to be revealed. The emperor decided to ask the high priest how much he planned to stay in the country, because the man had heard that he wanted to return to charity. In this matter, there was more interest not in Elihu's personal life, but in what the saint could find out about the real identity of the princess. The high priest understood what the ruler was talking about and said that this activity was over. Such a statement relaxed the couple, because then the man would stay here for a short time. But their expectations were dashed by Elihu's phrase, in which he said that he wanted to stay in the empire for a while. His gaze was kind and repulsive at the same time, as if he already knew something he shouldn't have known. Terella was shocked by this statement, not understanding what to do next. Leonfel decided to ask the high priest what made him linger in the country. Elihu explained that the junior priests were concerned that the temple had been unattended for a long time, so the senior priests went to do charitable work so that the high priest could stay here and look after the juniors and the temple. The man added that besides everything else, he needed to be at the emperor's wedding, to which Leonfel playfully replied that this was wonderful news. The emperor understood that this argument could not be disputed, so he urgently needed to come up with something. Since Terella needed to avoid the high priest so that he would not reveal her true identity, she decided to pretend that she was tired and took the ruler's hand. The girl asked Leonfel if they could leave with him, so the emperor told Elec that his bride was tired, and they would go to their chambers. The couple hoped that Terella would continue to be tired at the sight of the high priest in order to avoid unwanted encounters. Before the girl and the emperor had time to move away from the golden-haired man, he immediately asked them to stop. Elihu, with a sincere smile, asked Leonfel if he could bless him and the princess, granting spiritual cleansing. The emperor hoped that the high priest did not find out who Terella really was. The ruler turned to the girl and whispered to her that everything was all right. The princess was surprised by this statement and looked straight into the man's eyes. Leonfel, smiling, said that, as he had already said, this information is the secret of the future empress. After a short dialogue, the man released Terella and went to the high priest so that he would bless only him. This decision surprised the girl even more, who was only watching what was happening from afar. The emperor explained to Elihu, adding that the princess was already exhausted and now needed sleep. The blond man listened attentively to Leonfel's speech. The ruler asked if the next time the couple was free, they could come to the high priest for a blessing. At this time, a maid approached Terella and waited for her and the emperor to complete the ritual. Elihu smiled broadly and told Leonfel that he could visit him whenever he wished. The girl waited with relief for the emperor and the saint to finish, and was glad that the black-haired man intervened in the process, because just a little more and everything would have become known. Suddenly there was a quiet squeak, which Terella heard. She looked down to find the source of the sound and was surprised at what it turned out to be. A small, fluffy hamster was sitting on the carpet, looking straight at the girl with his button eyes. The princess was shocked that a lonely rodent, also so talkative, wandered here. When Leonfel entered the girl's chambers, she immediately rudely slammed the door behind him, as if expressing some kind of claim. Terella almost pushed the emperor into the wall when he entered. She asked the man if Elihu had guessed about her incommensurable powers. The ruler just laughed and said that instead of rejoicing at his arrival, the girl only talks about the high priest, and added that this offends him. The princess explained her behavior by saying that she was worried that someone would find out her secret, because then she and the emperor would have a hard time. Terella asked if Leonfel understood what she was talking about. The emperor smiled and asked the girl what he would benefit from the fact that Terella would be revealed. The princess was indignant and said that if the truth came out, she would not be able to become empress. The man was silent for a while, and then replied that everything was a little different, but the girl still shouldn't worry. The idea of getting rid of Elihu popped into Leonfel's thoughts while the girl was still angry with the emperor. She asked the man if she could trust him. Terella shared with her future husband that she suspected that he, Counselor Jeram, and the high priest were planning something behind her back. The man stood with a serious face, as if he did not want to listen to all this. Leonfel turned to the princess, who stood worriedly in front of him, putting her palms to her face. The man approached the girl and took her hand. He said that how can Terella still ask about this if she sees the emperor in such a state? To say that the princess was surprised is to say nothing. The ruler bent even closer to the girl and said that she must understand that besides him, Terella had no one else to trust. Such a small and uncomfortable distance between Leonhart and the princess made her blush, and she replied that she did not know. The girl decided not to hesitate and asked the emperor to undress so that they could begin the ritual. The blonde man said that now the princess wants to see him undress. Leonhart added that Terella so easily points out to him as if she was superior to him in rank. This infuriated the girl, and she replied that she only asked to take off her clothes and did not give orders. The princess did not understand how a man could not be ashamed of such expressions. The emperor asked the girl where all her modesty had gone. She just stood silently and blushed, not understanding whether Leonhart was angry or just imagining it. With a deft movement, the man quickly took off his shirt and threw it on the floor, simultaneously asking Terella if she had forgotten that she and the emperor were alone in this bedroom. The pumped-up man exposed his torso with a tattoo of tree branches, and holding his belt on his pants suggested to the girl that he take off all his clothes. The princess became more and more embarrassed, swallowing nervously and pursing her lips until she turned blue. This behavior caused Terella excitement and irritation. She did not understand what Leonhart wanted from her. The girl did not endure these attacks for long and deftly swung at the emperor, not being afraid of his strength and authority. She powerfully struck the ruler's chest with her palm, so much so that a red handmark remained on it. The man was shocked by such an unexpected blow and staggered from such a movement. Terella began hitting Leonhart's body with all her might, who could only cover himself with his hands, hoping that the girl would calm down. The princess was indignant that the man apparently forgot that he was currently a patient, so he had to undress in front of the girl because Terella's power would not work through clothes. The girl began to threaten the emperor that she would stop treating him. The princess said that if she did not fulfill Leonhart's whims and use her powers, then he would have to lock himself in his bedroom every night again and suffer from some kind of disease, such as alcoholism. The man stood beaten in front of the girl and covered himself with his hands. He began to make excuses to Terella and agree with her opinion. The girl in the nightie sat down on her bed, tapped the blanket, as if inviting her to her, and ordered the emperor to immediately come to her. The man picked up his shirt from the floor and walked towards the bed. Sometime later, when the couple finished performing the ritual, Terella sat tired in the same place and rubbed her forehead, and Leonhart, now with black hair, buttoned the buttons on his shirt. On the table in front of the guys, there was an iron cage with someone inside it. The man noticed the hamster's shelter and asked the girl what kind of fat mouse it was. The princess replied that it was a hamster, which she forgot to tell the emperor about. Terella introduced the ruler to the hamster, or rather to the female hamster, who at that time was washing herself and scratching her ear, sitting on a bed of hay. The girl expressed her intention to name her new friend the name Moo. Leonhart did not express much satisfaction with such guests, and said that for him a hamster is still a mouse. The emperor asked where the princess found the rodent, to which she replied that she saw it when she left the hall. She took it, remembering her hamster which she and her mother had in the royal palace, and his name was also Moo. Terella asked the ruler why he did not like hamsters, realizing that before taking the animal to her, she should have asked Leonhart. The man replied that everything was fine and the girl had nothing to worry about. Next to the cage stood a box with letters and a list that Counselor Jeram gave to the princess. The emperor told the girl that the more she finds something for herself here, the better it is for him. Noticing the mysterious box, Leonhart took out a letter from it and asked Terella in surprise if she was reading the messages that the advisor brought her. There was something on the envelope that the emperor picked up that attracted the man's special attention. He opened his eyes wide, as if then his life was divided into before and after. On the bottom of the envelope was someone's signature, which immediately caught the ruler's eye. The girl explained that she decided to read the letters, although she had not yet managed to study everything. Leonhart noticed that the sheet in his hands was written by the Duke of Rillenef. The future Empress listened carefully to her betrothed, not understanding what he was leading to. With one movement of his hand, the man quickly tore up the letter and explained to Terella that he respected her choice, but warned her not to get close to the Duke unknown to her. The girl asked why she could not contact Rillenef, to which the emperor asked a counter-question whether the princess remembered the rumors that he killed half of all the ministers of the empire when he was crowned. Levenfeld said that he still couldn't kill 2 people, and one of them was Duke Rillanef. The man explained that he really wanted the minister to die, but this cunning snake said that if the emperor killed him, it would change the future. Terella was shocked to hear the whole story from beginning to end. She had never seen Levenfeld so angry and nervous in her life. He stood and clenched his fists, as if he was ready to punch a wall with his hand. The girl began to assume that Counselor Jeram knows about the situation between the emperor and the duke, because he is his only close person. The princess did not understand why the blonde guy sent her a letter from Rillanef and advised Terella to meet him. This decision looked extremely illogical and added even more questions to the girl's already strange situation. The little hamster watched what was happening around her, and her gaze was so conscious that it seemed as if she had a human soul. Her eyes were deep and enchanting, like an endless ocean. And now the hour has come. After some time, the princess was already sitting in a room with black and gold walls, and was upset by the fact that when the weather was so pleasant and sunny, she had to sit in this room and discuss some topics. Terella sat with a serious face and looked at her interlocutor, trying to listen to every word and maintain the dialogue. An elderly man with a mustache opposite the girl was rejoicing in the fact that he finally got to meet the princess as he walked from the meeting. The aristocrat shared that he took tea with him, hoping for a meeting between him and Terella, and added that the gods heard his prayers. The man asked the girl if she could smell the interesting aroma of the tea, because wild rose petals were added to it. Usak shared that recently finding plants has become not so easy, like looking for a needle in a haystack. The princess really had the impression that she was eating flowers. The aristocrat was interested to hear Terella's opinion about the taste of the drink. The mysterious guest told the girl that he ordered this tea to be prepared because he thought it would suit her, because the princess was as beautiful as a blooming rose. The girl sat without a mood and was offended at herself for going to the garden, because she didn't even want to. The maid interrupted the conversation of the intelligentsia, asking Terella if she wanted tea, which the girl usually drinks. The man watched what was happening irritably. He clenched his teeth nervously, and it was clear that the guest did not like the servant's offer. The tea expert decided to give advice to the girl and told her that she needed to monitor the behavior of the servants, even if she had not yet become an empress. The princess was surprised and decided to ask the man what he meant. The frowning duke looked at Terella with an angry gaze and said that the maid has no right to interrupt the conversation of the owners without permission, because this is complete impudence. The aristocrat's blue eyes, filled with aggressiveness, caused discomfort and reluctance to continue the dialogue. The girl in the official suit immediately blushed and stood in complete shock, afraid to answer anything to the formidable man. The princess said that the maid was probably just worried about her, and nothing more. The pink-haired lady smiled broadly, lifted the purple cup of tea into the saucers, and promised the gray-haired guest that she would definitely discuss the events with the maid later. The man added that even if the worker came from another country, such an attitude towards the nobility is, at a minimum, disrespect for them. The mysterious guest continued that after the wedding, Terella will become an empress, and if she has such servants, then similar situations will be repeated time after time. The gray-haired man actively defended his position, hinting to the girl to change her mind. The princess knew very well people like the duke. These are smart, strong-willed people who understand perfectly how good they are, and are always dissatisfied with what they have. They look down on everyone and like to wipe their feet on ordinary people. It was clear from Terella's gaze that she was not happy with this pastime. The mustachioed grandfather suggested that the girl find her a more suitable maid. The man said that if the princess agreed to deprive the innocent assistant of her job, then he would do it as quickly as possible. Before he could finish speaking, Terella immediately agreed to his proposal. The maid stood in shock, realizing that now he could lose perhaps his only source of income. The future empress asked the surprised girl to bring her favorite tea, because the one the duke brought to the princess was tasteless. Terella had no idea how people even drank an herbal drink with such additives. The maid, stuttering, began to carry out the girl's order. The gray-haired man smiled and said that it seemed he had made a mistake with the tea, because the princess spoke so unflatteringly about him. The mysterious guest explained that Terella was simply not used to the taste of such a wonderful drink, and that it seemed wrong to her due to the fact that the girl had never tried it. However, this will not always be the case, because over time the princess will get used to it and she will like this tea. The man asked the girl to try the broth again, to which she replied that if you tolerate things you don't like, you can get very sick. Mustache tried to dispute this, saying that he could just be patient, and Terella said that she was not that patient person. The Duke said that with the level of patience of the future Empress, it would be difficult for her to drink ordinary tea. The princess asked the gray-haired genius not to worry and said that she had tried many different flavors that she did not like. The maid bowed to the nobles immediately after placing the tea on the table in front of Terella. Rillenef bent down a little and plunged into thought, remembering that Leonhart also didn't really like this tea with rose petals, so the girl didn't like it either. In his gaze one could read either sadness or sincere interest. The Duke continued his speech, saying that such tea was very difficult to find and asked the princess to think carefully before refusing such a drink. She just listened carefully and did not understand what the catch was. The gray-haired man said that many people want to get this pleasure, but not many succeed. The aristocrat was more serious than ever, as if hypnotizing Terella with his gaze. The elder said that it would be a sin for a girl to refuse such a thing when he brought this tea to her personally. Every word he said was full of pressure and an attempt to manipulate. The princess was about to answer something to the Duke, but something interrupted their conversation and she was not given the opportunity to speak out. Elihu entered the room and attention was paid to him. The couple was surprised to see him there, cheerful and smiling widely as always. The high priest said that he had seen Terella and Rillenef back in the garden and thought that they were having a wonderful time together, so Elihu decided to stop by and greet them. The blond man asked if he could join the tea party, hinting at his desire to talk to two acquaintances. The Duke immediately jumped up from his seat and began to make excuses that it was already very late, and he did not even notice how time quickly flew by during the conversations. The man said that he had to go to his next meeting, so he would go about his business. Before finally disappearing into the intricate corridors of the castle, Rillenef turned to Elish and asked him to explain to the future Empress how to enjoy tea, because according to the gray-haired man, the girl did not understand this at all. After the tea expert finally left the room, the high priest turned to Terella and warned her that the Duke emanated a faint smell, and it was better to avoid him, if the girl, of course, so desired. The princess asked the man if there was a faint smell coming from the old man, to which the saint answered in the affirmative. The girl sat thoughtfully on the sofa and thought that Elihu meant that the Duke smelled bad. This ironic and at the same time serious moment slightly lifted the mood of Terella, who had previously been trying to end the unpleasant conversation with Rillenef as quickly as possible. The blond man opened his eyes wide and bent slightly towards the princess, who sat in her place in surprise and did not understand what the high priest was leading to. He said that the girl emanated a pleasant smell of flowers, which sounded a little scary because it seemed that the guy was about to reveal Terella's secret. The girl understood that Elihu was too close to her and it was unsafe for her. The seemingly sweet and kind saint was right now almost ready to rush at the frightened princess, like a hungry wolf at his prey. The high priest never ceased to be surprised by the smell of Terella, which so intoxicated him and did not give him peace. Elihu's snow-white porcelain-like hand reached out to the girl, as if she were a forbidden fruit that so tempted the long-haired guy. Realizing that something inevitable could happen, the princess tried to stop the man by asking him what was happening, but she was immediately interrupted. Someone's strong hand grabbed Elihu's hand, eliminating the risk of Terella being identified. It seemed that there could not have been a happier moment in her life. Holding the high priest's hand, the emperor turned to him, wondering what had happened. He just hung his head disgustingly, realizing that his attempt to find out the truth was stopped immediately. Leonhart's future wife only watched in fear what was happening, not understanding what would happen next. The ruler asked Elihu what he was planning to do and why he should touch Terella. The blond guy immediately bowed to the emperor and greeted him, explaining that he had come to greet the princess. This answer did not satisfy Leonhart, and he told his interlocutor that, in his opinion, Elihu was letting his hands go and going where he shouldn't. The man immediately began to make excuses that he had never even thought about touching Terella, and as proof of his sincerity, The high priest swore with his life. Elihu began to apologize to the princess for the discomfort he had caused, to which she replied that everything was fine.